Attack. Beverly Hills, Cooper's house. Eric finished telling the information of the 5 women, and the mother made a record and analyzed their characteristics one by one. After her nudge, Eric had a feeling of sudden understanding. That sentence makes a lot of sense. Only women know women best, just as only men really understand men. If you want to understand a group of psychologists or sociologists, you must first become the other person. Looking at his mother's serious face, Eric's mind came up with the feeling that the Queen Mother was intimidating all the concubines and managing the harem. He thinks he knows a lot about several women, but compared with his mother's analysis, he finds that he is thinking more from the perspective of the powerful and the superior. And from a woman's point of view, many things are obviously not so simple. Their emotions are more delicate and complex, not as simple as Eric thinks. Dad kept smiling at Eric with a complicated face, which contained too many emotions. If Joshua had known, he would have been tempted to ask, "How did you manage the twins?" "Eric, none of them have taken the initiative to contact you at the moment, and that's because they are waiting for you to admit your mistake. I know you're going to be worried and scared because you really have feelings for them, not playthings that you can throw away at any time. So remember, they didn't make trouble with you in the first place, but also because they were worried and scared. You are on the same level, understand?" Eric nodded. "Makes sense. Well, then all you have to do now is to appease and coax. Call each of them, and remember that the Olsen sisters are also going to fight separately, although they are twins, but they are 2 girls. I think Ashley and Mary should know about my relationship with Godot, and I often take Elizabeth and Godot out to play, and Elizabeth is their little sister. Son, knowing yourself and taking the initiative to explain are 2 different things, which means your attitude. Be serious, understand? Okay, Mom, as long as I can get them, I'll listen to you." Make an appointment for them to come to the house for dinner together, with me and Xiali present. No one dares to be presumptuous, and I will help you settle them when the time comes. Are you sure? Eric looked at his mother wistfully. Do your best. The girl you've provoked is much more difficult than Joshua's, and remember to me that I don't want to hear any more news about your lace in the future. Of course, I promise not. Eric didn't even think about saying yes. As for other women, with the first time, do they still care about the second time? As long as the bottom line is broken, people will only keep lowering their bottom line. What about Mom's cruel words? As the youngest son who is most loved, Eric is favored to have no fear, because she will only stand by her side no matter what. Dad opened his mouth and said, "Okay, that's the end of the woman's business. Now let's analyze how MGM can break the game. Forget about the press conference. The mainstream media are all their people, and holding a press conference is tantamount to self-inflicted humiliation. In the afternoon, I will be interviewed by YouTube and Yahoo to make a clarification on this matter, and the crew of The Walking Dead will also participate at that time. The crew has collected evidence of Balafali's absenteeism, and the company has also contacted the Actors Union and Balafali's agent. Other acquaintances are saying hello, and they all know what to say. Will the union be on our side? The union does not stand in line, just like the statement issued, but it is willing to tell the truth on the facts, and the 3 major brokerage companies also have this attitude." Dad nodded. "It's good news, but Balavari will definitely bite the bullet and deny it, so things will still fall into Rashomon. As long as the woman doesn't come forward to tell the truth, or doesn't have conclusive evidence, the repercussions will last." "That's right. That's why I have a headache. The Big Six must have hidden her in a very secret place. I'm afraid it's hard to find her." After a moment of silence, Dad sighed. "Eric, since those old guys have abandoned the bottom line, then we can't be too disciplined. Reciprocal countermeasures? Actually, I also think this way. I can't let the 6 big people stand on the dry shore and watch. I have to pull them into the water too. It's good to fish in muddy waters. Yes, it's good to fish in troubled waters." Any thoughts? Eric's eyes turned cold. As far as the black material I have so far, the first one is Harvey Weinstein. You must have heard about him, Dad. Dad also sneered. Harvey, this guy is a typical representative of public power and private use, and no one in his circle doesn't know. I'm afraid that the actresses who were sexually assaulted by him under the pretext of auditioning are not 500 but 300. What? So much? Mom exclaimed. I'm going to say that Eric shouldn't be allowed to go to Hollywood. He should go and study finance. At least it's not so dirty. Come on, Emily. The financial world isn't much cleaner, and besides, not everyone is as scummy as Harvey Weinstein. Most of them still maintain a basic demeanor. It's like your son, right? Talking about 5 girlfriends at the same time and exposing it can be regarded as an eye-opener for people all over the world. Mom, at least I haven't sexually assaulted anyone. At most it's a moral issue. Harvey Weinstein is a legal issue. I'm on entertainment news. He's going to be on legal and social news. If you don't restrain yourself, sooner or later you will be like this scumbag. I don't want to visit you in prison in your twilight years. Eric chuckled. I've already sent someone to find the victims, and I've hired a private investigator to get something interesting as soon as possible. Once the Harvey Weinstein affair broke out, it would definitely be enough to divert the public's attention, and Miramax would not be spared. As a subsidiary of Disney, messing up Miramax is equivalent to cutting off one of Disney's arms, and Mickey Mouse will also have a headache. The second flashpoint in my hands is about MySpace, and you all know that Facebook and MySpace are competitors. As a catch-up, MySpace has resorted to playing pornography in order to catch up with Facebook. This approach really makes MySpace has amassed a lot of popularity in a short period of time, but the price is obvious. It's been almost a year, and this so-called social networking site has completely degenerated into a pornographic site. Regardless of gender, as long as it is a high-traffic blogger, almost all of them are nude. Not only is pornography rampant, but it has also caused a large number of sexual crimes, including many against minors, which has become a breeding ground for perversion. Facebook has been collecting evidence and information in this regard, just to give the other side a fatal blow at a critical moment. They slandered me and Godot as underage sex offenders, and I'd like to see how MySpace explains. Dad was a little worried. I remember your Facebook, which also involves edge messaging. Yes, it's a drifting bottle function, but it's only an embellishment, and it can be permanently stopped at any time. But can MySpace be stopped? To stop is to fall. I cut off a finger, but I can exchange an opponent's life. It's worth it. After the collapse of MySpace, there was no social media in the whole market that could compete with Facebook. And the British market has been opened. Canada and Mexico are almost talking. Not only the United States, but also the world. Facebook is no longer invincible. And after defeating MySpace, it is equivalent to abolishing one of Fox's tongues, and the Big Six will lose their only network base. Have you figured out what to do? Well, I have roughly already had an idea. They want to play the other way to give back to the other. I'll do the opposite. Wait and see. After Eric finished speaking, he looked at his father. I probably formulated these 2 strategies. What do you think, Dad? Dad smiled with relief. I was worried that you would fall into the disadvantage, but now it seems very good. Fighting with this group of old bastards is to abandon your bottom line. But how can you strike on both sides? If you want them to mess with themselves, you have to work harder. It just so happens that I still have some information resources in my hands, and I can find some fault with those old things. The strongest of the 6 is Disney, and the sniping of MGM is led by Disney, son. Let me ask you, what is Disney's biggest weakness? Weakness. It's its revenue point. Is it a movie? Is it copyright? Playground. It dawned on Eric. That's right, it's Disney's proud amusement parks. Movies are to increase influence and create IP, but the profits created can only account for less than 30% of Disney's revenue, while amusement parks can account for more than 40%. Just imagine if something goes wrong with Disney Playground. Is Michael Enos still in the mood to go against us? I'm afraid he will be anxious. Dad, where are you going to start? Eric asked with interest. Of course, it's safety, and the most feared thing about amusement parks is safety, not to mention that Disney always claims to be 100% safe. Xiaoli, you can't mess around. Security is not a trivial matter. It will kill people. Mom grabbed Dad's hand and said nervously. Dad kissed her. Don't worry, dear. I'm already retired, and the fight and killing have left me. But there are still many people in the government department who are willing to sell my face. As long as I investigate carefully, there is no place in the world that is absolutely compliant. There is no need to make it too big. Let it be closed for rectification for 3 or 5 months. The loss will be enough for Enos to be painful. See how he will explain to the board of directors at that time. In addition to giving them trouble from the outside, they can also attack from the inside, and the management of one of the 6 companies is the most special. Disney, Paramount, Universal, Warner, and Sony all have one president, while Fox has a dual president system. Its board of directors is co-chaired by 2 co-chairs, Thomas Rothman and Jim Giannopoulos. Both have their own supporters, with Thomas Rodman currently dominating and Jim Giannopoulos being suppressed for filming. Thomas Rodman was responsible for the decision to participate in the crackdown on MGM, and Jim's voice was not fully considered. This year is 2004, and the contracts signed by both of them with the company are about to expire, and next year is the time to reshuffle. Now both want to enlist the support of News Corp's top brass to really get one-of-a-kind power next year, but it's clear that Thomas Rodman has the upper hand. Eric, if you were Jim Giannopoulos and you were in a situation where you could be swept away, would you be in a hurry? Eric nodded, definitely worried. Yes, Jim is in this mindset right now, and I can contact him secretly and test his attitude. If he doesn't refuse my invitation, there's going to be drama in messing up the inside of Fox. And Paramount's weaknesses are also clear. Brad Grey is obviously not capable of managing the company well. Paramount is getting worse and worse in his hands. If this situation continues, there will not be long before he rolls up and rolls out. And I heard that the reason why he agreed to join the Sniper was because Disney promised to lend Paramount a sum of money to help Brad Grey tide over the storm. So Brad is actually the most vacillating of the big 6. In other words, Paramount can actually be used as a target for wooing. Even if he is the least likely to do so, as long as we are willing to offer some benefits, he will most likely choose to leave the league. At that time, whether it is to follow MGM or watch from the wall, it will be a huge blow to the morale of the big 6. You can also let those people in the market see that we are not vulnerable, and this battle is still to be fought. His mouth was a little dry, and his father took a sip of water. Son, the mall is like a battlefield, harassment, division, and disintegration. As long as you use it well, you can always find the enemy's weakness. Sure enough, there is an old man in the family, and after listening to his father's analysis, Eric was thoughtful. Dad, how did you know all this confidential information? Young man, I told you a long time ago, although work is important, don't ignore those evening parties. Well, since you retired, I did participate less, and I'll pay attention to it later. Well, then follow these paths. It seems that my old bones are going to move again. Dad stretched and stood up, picked up his phone, and walked to the balcony. Eric also returned to his room, opened the address book, and selected Nico's phone to call. Has a mother to support herself, and her hands are much more stable. Nico, my darling, I'm sorry, but there's one thing I have to confess to you. Theron, my darling, I'm sorry, but there's one thing I have to confess to you. Ashley, my darling, I'm sorry, but there's one thing I have to confess to you. Mary, my darling, I'm sorry, but there's one thing I have to confess to you. Godot, my darling. I'm sorry, but there's one thing I have to confess to you. Intensifying the MGM building, where reporters from Lionheart, YouTube, and Yahoo all gathered to prepare for the next interview. As for the paparazzi of major TV stations and newspapers, they were all turned away. However, although this approach can prevent them from getting effective information and not giving Eric problems, it does not stop them from disgusting themselves. Because these TV stations chose to start the live broadcast, the camera was on the MGM gate. The theme is that MGM closed the door and refused to be interviewed, suspected of being weak-hearted, and Eric Cooper must have a ghost in his heart. If you don't have a problem, why don't you dare to accept our interview? If you don't accept it, there is a problem. Ignoring MGM's hostile stance with them, logic makes sense, since the vast majority of the world is a rabble anyway. These people don't think independently, they believe whatever the media says, and they are most suitable for being used as gunmen. Compared with the era of self-media in later generations, although this situation is also very serious, compared with the people of this period, there is no doubt that the people of this era are more ignorant and ignorant. After the vigorous hype of the 6 major congresses and TV stations, the flame of public opinion has been burned. Many people ran to MGM's official website to leave messages and insults, demanding that Eric apologize and give an explanation. Others have threatened not to give Lionheart a member next month, and to boycott Transformers and the Hunger Games against Gal Gadot as a bitch. There are also many calls for local prosecutors in Los Angeles to take action and launch an investigation into whether Eric sexually assaulted minors. Let go of me. You've hurt me, bastard. No way, I will never let go. You are my love, and you will be for the rest of your life. In the lounge, Eric hugged Godot and pressed him to the couch. Although he apologized on the phone, even Godot, who was the most obedient, immediately scolded Eric. He could only keep apologizing and apologizing, expressing remorse and love, and then tricked the other party into this interview. Of course, a few words of apology obviously can't eliminate Godot's dissatisfaction and hatred. Even if she saves face for Eric in front of outsiders, she can't help but punch and kick when the two face each other. At the beginning of Eric's request, Godot has been working out since he came to Hollywood. Although he is not a muscular woman, but his strength should not be underestimated. Caring for his own losses, Eric wanted to be beaten by her to get angry, but he didn't expect to almost vomit out his bitter gall after a few punches. Sure enough, although Papa Pie is also physically demanding, it is obviously not a substitute for fitness. Fortunately, Godot was still worried about him and saw that his expression was uncomfortable, and he didn't continue to do it, and then he was pressed to the sofa. Eric kept kissing her, trying to pry the other person's mouth open, but without success, and suddenly felt a salty taste stimulate his taste buds. When I looked up, I saw that 2 lines of tears had slipped down Godot's eyes and down his face. Eric felt a pain in his heart and helped her up in a hurry. I'm sorry, baby, don't cry. I'm only getting worse when you cry. Godot was silent, but the tears kept falling down. Eric didn't know what to do, so he could only continue to apologize and hold her tightly in his arms. After a while, Godot said quietly, I'm going home. You disappointed me, Eric. We're finished. No, don't say that, dear. How can we finish? I'm going to go on with you, and I want to be good with you for 100 years. Humph. Let's go with those women. Nicole Kidman, Charlize Theron, Sister Olsen. Your taste is really big. The twins are disgusting to me, and after the interview is clarified, I'll go back to Israel, just because we've never known each other. Wait, Godot, you can't do this. Have you forgotten your dreams? You want to become a world-class star. As long as you finish filming The Hunger Games, this dream can come true. You are about to succeed. How can you give up? Godot shook his head with red eyes. Eric, that's your dream. It's not mine. It doesn't matter if you don't make a movie or not. It's not in my life plan in the first place. I thank you for letting me dream of stardom for 2 years, but that's the end of it. I can't film while thinking about you making out with other women. I don't have such a generous fraternity. I'm not in the mood to make the Hunger Games anymore, and although I don't have enough money to pay the liquidated damages, I still have a 1% stake in MGM. Just use this 1% of the shares to pay off the debt. I think it can be worth more than 100 million, enough for you to shoot again. Seeing that Godot had even thought about the way back and seemed to have made up his mind, Eric had even more headaches. Honey, you can't do this. You can't just abandon me like this. I want to tell you one more thing. What's the matter? Godot asked feebly. My mom wants to see you. Hearing this, Godot was a little surprised. Why are you seeing me? You told her? Well, she was very happy to learn about our love and invited you to the house for dinner, and my dad knew about it, and they were willing to accept you as a member of the Cooper family. Godot was stunned for a moment, and then asked in a flat tone, when? Seeing that her attitude eased somewhat, Eric breathed a sigh of relief. On Friday, you must come. I promised that they would persuade you to come to the house. Don't let me be embarrassed. Humph. Besides, I'm going to think about it. Phew. Eric let out a sigh of relief. Dealing with women's affairs is even more tiring than fighting with the big six. Fighting with those old bastards, you can use any means, but for your own woman, in addition to apologizing as appeasement, the result depends on the other party's mood. Tired. It's so tired. No wonder they all say chasing their wives in the crematorium. Mom, it's all up to you. Fight for your son. Eric roared inwardly, wiping away tears, touching up makeup, and making sure others couldn't see that they had cried. The two attended the interview together, a group of people to be exact. Set up the camera and aim it at the camera. Lionheart still adopts the live broadcast mode, and the other two are edited and recorded. The benefits of this are obvious. Others can't hack themselves through malicious editing. The staff motioned for a start, and the Yahoo reporter began to ask questions. This time Yahoo sang the lead role, lest someone say that Eric deliberately whitewashed. Well, Yahoo is not my soldier, and it always has some credibility. Mr. Cooper, do you know what Palafali said? A lot of people are hoping that MGM will give an explanation. Eric turned on the microphone. I know. Today is just to clarify this matter. Clarification? Do you mean that what Balavari says is false? Yes, it's a complete fabrication, without the slightest credibility, and Barafali was instructed to deliberately frame me and Godot. To frame MGM, it's a conspiracy. In the lies she fabricated, Godot and I became heinous slave owners, and we are as hateful as Satan. But the fact is that she was able to come to Hollywood to develop and be well known today is all due to the opportunities given by MGM. It sounds like there's a lot of untold stories behind it. The reporter's eyes lit up. I want to let the public know everything. Godot, you can tell me. Eric looked to the side. Godot nodded, and then explained in detail how he and Beryl Lavari came to the United States from Israel and what happened in between. There was anger and confusion in her tone and expression. I still don't understand. Why did Lafali frame me? We have known each other for a long time, and we have lived under the same roof for 2 years, and I have always regarded her as my closest relative, but she disappointed me so much. I don't know if Lafali has been threatened or has other grievances, but I want her to come forward and tell the truth, and I'm willing to help her, and we're all willing to help her. In other words, you have not exploited and oppressed Balafari at all? The reporter continued to ask. Eric took over. I also want to ask a lot of doubters, if Palafali is really as miserable as she said, how can she explain all this? First, The Walking Dead, then House of Cards. All of them are dramas that will inevitably become popular with big investment, and her roles are still very likable, and they all occupy a lot of weight. I would like to ask, looking at the whole of Hollywood, How many people can enjoy the treatment of Valle Feli? Shelley, you have the most say on this issue. The camera was given to the representative of the actors' union, and the task she received this time was to deal with it impartially, and only tell the truth she had. If you look at the number of registrations in the Screen Actors Guild, there is no doubt that if you can play an important role in a hit drama on your debut, Valle Feli's luck and treatment have surpassed 99% of the actors. That's right, she was able to take on commercial performances and attend the Emmy Awards because I was praising her, not squeezing her. But Valle Feli lived up to my trust. She was willful, thinking that with a little fame she could do whatever she wanted, and she didn't follow the rules of the set. And I still gave her more than a week to reflect, but she didn't appreciate the opportunity, so MGM was forced to fire her. It's not my nonsense. Everything has been proven. After saying that, Frank Darabont showed the check-in records and related photos on the set during this time, and the Screen Actors Guild also confirmed this. Rick, Crossbow Brother, Wu Yanzu, and other actor representatives also expressed their opinions. And the one who really gave the fatal blow was Bar Lefeli's agent, who was about to blow up her head for the past few days because of this matter and hated this slut in her heart. In her narration, Valle Feli becomes a temperamental, jealous, and ambitious scheming woman. In the narration of the people, the attitudes of many viewers who watched the live broadcast have changed. I said a long time ago, what Valle Lefeli said may not be credible, at least MGM can produce evidence, and she can only talk about it. Eric Cooper said it was an elaborate trap, and when he got into trouble, the TV station and the newspapers were eager to broadcast it around the clock, and it was self-evident who was planning it. I almost got cheated on that bitch. I scolded for a long time. I should apologize to Eric Cooper and Gal Gadot. Eric Cooper is a powerful person with a lot of resources, and he wants to hold a whitewashing conference. Who of these people will not cooperate? There is no credibility at all. Why only Yahoo, YouTube, and Lionheart reporters were allowed to enter the market? MGM is obviously weak-minded. This is all discussed. Don't be fooled. I'd still prefer to believe in Valle Lefeli's character. She's closer to us, isn't she? What's the bullshit reason to get closer? She can earn hundreds of thousands of dollars for a play, can you? At the scene, the reporter looked at the interview catalog and raised another issue that attracted great attention. Mr. Cooper, your relationship with Gal Gadot is also the focus of everyone's attention. May I ask if she was an adult when you started dating? Eric reached out and shook Gadot's hand. No, she was 17 years old at the time, but I can guarantee that we never broke through the last layer until she was 18 years old. Gadot said solemnly, "This is a private matter between us, and I don't want everyone to pay too much attention to this aspect. In my time with Eric, he was always like a gentleman and never acted excessively. I'm grateful for everyone's concern, but that's it." Seeing that there was no problem with the reporters, Eric finally said, "The facts will never be buried, they will never be covered up, and the people who are hiding behind the scenes will eventually be found out. If Valle Feli dares to admit that what he said is true, then stand up and confront him on the spot, otherwise you don't deserve sympathy." How many hearts can be saved by this interview? Eric's mind is not clear. All he can do is do his best. After the end, I wanted to take Gadot to the new house to see it, but the girl was obviously angry and refused his invitation. The next day, the discussion about the matter reached a new level as Yahoo and YouTube released a video of the interview. But it still worked, and there were obviously a lot more voices supporting MGM, and there were many people calling on Valle Lefeli not to hide, and Real Gold was not afraid of fire. There are also some people who think that it is outrageous to hold on to the relationship between Eric and Gadot. People are willing to fight and suffer, and their feelings are so good. Do you want to be nosy? However, there are also many people who believe that the investigation must be clear, otherwise it is tantamount to conniving with juvenile sex crimes. Major television stations and newspapers have been pressuring the Los Angeles justice system over the matter, but there has been no response. And some gossip tabloids and magazines also publish so-called interviews again. In these interviews, Eric and Godot, as Valle Lefrey puts it, heinous villains, bullies on the set. But without exception, the interview subjects either cannot be leaked or are insiders but cannot be named, and more have participated in the MGM Project Group performances. Anyone with a bit of independent thinking knows that this kind of interview has little credibility. But there are too many of them, and when many people around you are passing on the same message, the three of them become tigers, and the fake ones also become real in the addition of oil and vinegar. YouTube interviewed many Hollywood stars that Eric was familiar with, and the comments they gave were very positive. On Facebook, Little Cheap, Chris Evans, Hugh Jackman, Peter Jackson, etc. also made remarks in support of Eric's character. The two sides seem to be caught in a tug-of-war, but without the support of the mainstream media, MGM still fell behind. The box office of $1 Million Baby also suffered badly. Even IMDb's rating slipped below 8 points. Eric hasn't been too lazy to go out these days, comforting a few big babies while planning a counterattack. Fast forward to Thursday, and under huge pressure from public opinion, the Los Angeles judicial system finally couldn't stand it and said that it would investigate whether Eric had sexually assaulted minors. Mr. Eric Cooper, I'm Leonard, the local prosecutor, and I'm now sending you an investigative inquiry. Please cooperate. A uniformed man with glasses, accompanied by 2 police officers, walked into Eric's office. Seeing the police enter the MGM headquarters building, the paparazzi squatting outside instantly climaxed. The flash was still dazzling even in broad daylight, and the photo was quickly sent out with the manuscript that had been prepared. At the same time, the phone spreads out like a spider's web, and hundreds of cars are rushing towards it, encircling Eric like a large web. The security guards looked at the long guns and cannons erected at the door and hundreds of paparazzi, all of them worried and waiting. Seeing such a big battle, many pedestrians gradually gathered around, and it is human nature to see the excitement regardless of national borders and races. Mr. Cooper, you can tell the truth in your office. We really didn't intend to get involved in this in the first place. But there is a lot of pressure from the media, and the state government cannot ignore public opinion. We can only do this, and I ask for your understanding. But I can assure you that the Los Angeles judiciary doesn't take a position. We're just going to take matters into account and just report the facts. If you're innocent, then you're innocent, okay? For the prosecutor's visit, Eric had long expected that the 6 big ones didn't know how many trolls they had hired to hack themselves. Coupled with the hype of TV stations and newspapers, the government would definitely take measures. Ballot politics is about being accountable to your voters no matter what, or you'll step down. Work needs, I understand your situation very well, and I also hope to use the official voice to restore my innocence. Eric said, standing up. Seeing that he had no intention of resisting, the other party breathed a sigh of relief. As a large taxpayer, he was still a powerful and influential celebrity, and the police generally did not want to provoke him. Thank you for your cooperation. Let's go. Of course you can bring your lawyer. When they walked out the door, they were greeted by countless flashing lights. Even though Eric was used to this feeling, this time it was overdone, and he felt glaring, let alone the others. The paparazzi rushed up in a swarm, trying to surround a few people, but the security guards immediately formed a human wall to block them. They asked questions, but Eric didn't bother to pay attention and got into the car and headed for the police station. The best response to this situation is to say nothing. Everything you say will be misinterpreted, and the lawyer keeps reminding him. Seeing that they couldn't get the answer they wanted, the paparazzi could only rush into the car to keep up. Suddenly, a lavish car chase was staged on the streets of Los Angeles. At the front was a police car, followed by a Lincoln sedan, and not far behind the sedan were hundreds of vehicles of various colors. Many paparazzi directly open the skylight, carrying cameras and cameras to start the live broadcast of the scene in front of them. Thundered. In the sky, several helicopters with ABC, Fox, and NBC logos are hovering, and they are also full of paparazzi, taking panoramic views directly from a top-down view. In order to catch up with the news scene, especially the more popular and urgent scenes, large television stations are equipped with helicopters. As soon as they received the news of the police visit, they immediately smelled blood and had to make things bigger and show the whole of America the footage of Eric Cooper being brought into the police station. At the same time, with the help of the power of public opinion, continue to put pressure on the judiciary. Even if Eric is really innocent, you will make your reputation stink. Boss, after all these years, I swear I've never experienced such a big scene in my career. Pete looked at the endless captain long behind him and said in surprise, "Interesting, isn't it?" Eric smiled. "Boss, are you still in the mood to laugh? Aren't you worried? Look at those guys. They look like they're going to eat people." Cannibalism? It's the right word. Somebody just wants to eat me alive. They want to dismember MGM and Lionheart. They want to kick me out of Hollywood. Pete frowned. "I don't want this to happen if you leave, boss. Where can I find such a well-paid job?" "Ha ha ha ha, don't worry, I'm not going to break down and you won't lose your job. Of course, I always have absolute confidence in you." Looking down at my phone, the messages didn't stop, and Nico, Theron, Ashley, and Mary all sent text messages. The content is much the same. They all tell him to be careful, don't talk nonsense, obey the lawyer's arrangement in everything, don't trust the police easily, etc. Although they still didn't give Eric a good face, in the man's tireless and cheeky begging for mercy, their attitudes were relieved, and they promised to come to the house for dinner tomorrow night. "Ben, come and see. There are good programs on TV, and all major TV stations are broadcasting live." "What? What's wrong with car chases? Hundreds of cars chasing through the streets of Los Angeles and helicopters in the sky?" A middle-aged white man came out of the toilet and looked at the TV screen in surprise. "OMG. This scene reminds me of the Simpson murder case. Do you remember that day?" Remember very clearly. It was a big day, and in 1994 it was a sensation all over the world. It was as lively as it was today. Who are they chasing? Eric Cooper, a Hollywood bigwig, is said to have sexually assaulted minors and done a lot of disgusting things. It's this young man. I've been seeing his news all the time. Doesn't it say he's innocent? Innocent? How can it be innocent? These people who hold power will always try their best to bully the weak. They are all bad guys. I don't think so. Your point of view is clearly biased, and conclusions cannot be drawn without evidence. I think the evidence will be there soon. Do you think Eric Cooper will still be able to get out of the police station? Then I'd love to see it. Drink soda? We can watch while drinking. It's
Fine.
In the live broadcasts of major TV stations, the number of viewers skyrocketed, even if it was not a day off. Even if it was still daytime, the audience quickly exceeded 30 million and further surged. At the police station, after parking the car, Eric followed Leonard inside. The paparazzi were not allowed to enter, so they surrounded the place from the outside, and the camera was focused on the front and rear doors in case Eric disappeared. At the same time, many people who watched the excitement continued to gather, and there were even many demonstrators and protesters. The 11-12, they gathered in groups of 3 or 5, holding signs in their hands and wearing clothes with the words "severe punishment for sexual assault," and stood outside shouting slogans. Looking through the glass and looking at the scene outside, Eric sneered, "If these people are not hired by the Big Six, I will screw my head off." Godot looked worried. "Eric, I feel bad. I'm lucky to find a temporary shelter. Otherwise, it would have been bad." "What? Have you been attacked?" "No, but my apartment was stoned and the landlord called me." Eric took her in his arms, and Godot struggled a few times, but his strength didn't seem to be as strong as that day. "I've been worried that this kind of thing will happen. Don't live there anymore. I bought you a house and you can move in." With a click, the door was pushed open and Prosecutor Leonard walked in, and the two separated. "Mr. Cooper, Ms. Godot, are you ready?" The two nodded, and then were questioned separately by their lawyers, all of which were routine questions, mainly for taking notes. More than an hour later, the two were tested separately by polygraphs. A lie detector test is currently the most convenient and effective way to do it. After all, medicine can only repair that layer of membrane, and it has not yet developed a time to detect when it has broken that layer. There is also the possibility of collusion in confessions, so using a lie detector is the best way to distinguish the true from the false. The principle of this thing is also very simple. It is to record the various physiological reactions that occur when a person's mood changes, such as breathing, pulse, frequency, blood pressure, and skin moisture. The vast majority of people experience a series of changes in nervous system function when they lie or are affected by emotional words, which is a type of conditioned reflex. Unless they have been trained or are born with strong psychological qualities, the average person cannot control their stress response, so the success rate of the test is as high as 85%. However, polygraph results are not admissible as evidence in court. After all, even a 1% error cannot be used as evidence for conviction or exoneration. Eric is also anxious to clarify, and he and Godot have a clear conscience, and it is a good idea to accept a polygraph. "Mr. Cooper, Ms. Godot, congratulations to both of you for passing the polygraph. It seems that the controversy can end here." Leonard breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the results, and no one in the entire police department hierarchy wanted Eric to be a minor sexual assaulter, which would lead to a very troublesome outcome. In the face of such a super-rich man, and under the premise that the woman is willing, it will be difficult to implement the judicial process, and the pressure of public opinion will be great at that time, and it will be a hot potato. All is fine, and that's the best outcome. "So it's over?" Eric asked. "I think so. A lot of people want to know the results, and the LAPD will be happy to help you clarify." Eric laughed and said, "It was an interesting experience. I didn't expect to be a polygraph one day, and to be honest, it's quite funny." "A surprising answer, Mr. Cooper." "Because we have a clear conscience, and I suddenly had an idea. I want to do a variety show with the theme of lie detection." "Huh." Everyone, including Godot, didn't react in a daze, and this leap of thought was too unbelievable. "Big brother, do you know that you are now a suspect? Do you know that you are being criticized by the whole society? Why did you get involved in TV variety shows? Where do you get the mood? Show? What program? It's fun to dig up people's secrets and ask them hard questions to tell the truth, isn't it? Mr. Leonard, when you do polygraphs, do you imagine using them on ordinary people to find out the deepest secrets of the other person's heart?" "Well, once in a while, after all, everyone has a thirst for knowledge, and everyone loves to explore, not to mention that my profession includes this element." "No, it's not exploration, it's uncovering other people's scars and having fun with it, and I think everyone is going to love the show." Everyone was speechless, but they vaguely felt that this was indeed a great gimmick. Watching others suffer is a happy thing. Isn't that the bridge of a comedy movie? Only if the characters in it are unlucky will the audience laugh. At this time, the outside of the police station was already surrounded by water, and everyone was waiting for an answer. As Eric and Godot appeared, the noise suddenly reached a climax. "Sexual assault. Sexual assault. Sexual assault." Someone took the lead and shouted loudly, "Mr. Prosecutor, has Eric Cooper pleaded guilty? He's a criminal who sexually assaults minors, right? The public wants social justice, and they hope that the law can punish the bad guys more." Prosecutor Leonard took the microphone and said, "Everyone, be quiet. Be quiet, please. We've done polygraphs on Eric Cooper and Gal Gadot, and now I'm going to announce the results. Please be quiet." The noise suddenly stopped, and tens of millions of viewers watched this moment at the same time in front of the TV. In the shot, Eric's face is calm, giving people the feeling that everything is under control and Tarzan is collapsing in front of him without changing his face. After a polygraph, Mr. Cooper is innocent. He and Ms. Gadot are in love normally, and this is the result.
No.
Not hearing the desired result, many people immediately began to scream again. Against shady. Against privilege. Against shady. Against privilege. Against shady. Against privilege. So far, the police have done what they should do, and seeing that these people have not stopped, and there is already a suspicion of making trouble, many police officers are immediately ready to forcibly disperse. "Can I say a few words?" At this time, Eric took the microphone and said suddenly. He looked at the people below defiantly. "I know what you want to do. I know why you are gathered here. You want to label me as a criminal, even if it is fake. But this country is about the law. Not whoever has the loudest voice is right. The law proves that I have not done it. I am innocent, and I am innocent even if you frame me again. But on the contrary, there are some people in this society who are not clean, and that is the real place where sex crimes are concentrated, and even contain a large number of underage sex crimes. Now, I'm going to reveal it to an audience all over the United States." As soon as Eric's words fell, a large number of people carrying cameras suddenly appeared from all directions from the periphery, and in a moment, they had formed a counter-encirclement of reporters from major TV stations and newspapers. Under the camera, every station logo is clearly visible: the New York Times, the Washington Post, ABC, CBS, Fox. And at the same moment, the live broadcast interface of Lionheart suddenly popped out and sent a notification to all users. This feeling of putting yourself in the spotlight makes many paparazzi very uncomfortable. Usually they pick up others, but at this moment, there is a feeling that they are about to be stripped naked. The paparazzi with high authority directly wanted to turn off the live TV, and the little guy with low authority hurriedly asked his superiors. Looking at the scrambled appearance of these guys, Eric said loudly, "Now that all the media in the United States are here, I don't want to be named, but I have to tell you. They are already in the live broadcast of Lionheart.com. The media's job is to expose the darkness and uphold justice, and if you turn off the live broadcast now, you don't dare to deliver what I'm saying to the audience in front of the TV. So it proves that you are weak-minded. You have discarded the impartial position that a media should have, or have you become a tool to attack others? Now is the time to prove to the national audience that your credibility exists." Angry roar in front of the Los Angeles Police Department. Looking at the paparazzi who were a little flustered, Eric smiled at the corner of his mouth. For this moment, he had been planning for several days. Without the support of the mainstream media, especially the TV station, MGM has always been in a weak position in this public opinion war. He thought for a long time about how to reverse the decline and finally formulated this strategy. Use yourself as bait to attract these guys, and then use their influence to build momentum for yourself. Attacking the shield of the sun with the spear of the sun. I don't know how you can crack it. If you accept the offer, then I will give you a big eye. If you don't accept the offer, then your credibility will be greatly reduced in front of the national audience. Eric is playing with a two-end block, Sue's choice. At this moment, in front of the TV, tens of millions of people are watching in front of the screen, and they find that this scene is really getting more and more interesting, and it is really fun to watch the big guys fight. Lionheart.com. Members who received the system notification also switched to the live broadcast interface, and soon millions of people joined in, and the number continues to increase. What does Eric Cooper want to do? What's going on? Where is he? It seems to be very lively. Can't you see the words next to it? LAPD, This is the Los Angeles Police Department, and below it are reporters from major TV stations and newspapers, who are surrounded by reporters from Lionheart.com. What? What a hot feeling. Do you want to fight? A paparazzi scuffle starts in front of the police station, which sounds good. Ha 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 ha. That's a good idea indeed. Idiot. Apparently, this is Eric Cooper's ploy. He wants to roast the TV station on the fire and force them to compromise. Did you watch TV? The police said that Eric Cooper passed the polygraph test, which means that he and Gal Gadot dated for a year before eating each other. Can you believe it? I don't believe it. I firmly don't believe it. If Gal Gadot were my girlfriend, I wouldn't be able to wait a minute. Agreed. Even if it's in a public area, I must put her in place. Transformers is really good. She's very spicy, and from a man's point of view, I firmly don't believe anyone can withstand a year. Brother, don't talk about a man's perspective. Even as a woman, I can't withstand it for a year. This kind of behavior is simply against the human physiological structure. But Eric Cooper passed the polygraph. How do you explain it? Did he train specifically? No kidding. He's not an agent. He's not a military officer, and I can't think of any reason why he would do this kind of training. Maybe it's because Eric Cooper is born with a strong psychological quality. He's a genius, the youngest super billionaire in history, the youngest best screenwriter in history. He made YouTube, Facebook, and brought MGM back to life. It's like magic. There is truth to that. Eric Cooper is certainly the kind of person with a very strong psychological quality. I also agree with this point of view. Anyway, I don't believe that in the face of Gal Gadot, there is a man who can endure it for a year, unless he can't poachy. The views of the members of the Lionheart Network also represent the views of the vast majority of people, and if Eric had heard their discussion, he would have cried and fainted in the toilet. But there are also those who put forward a different perspective. I think you guys are thinking too complicated. Eric Cooper can hold back, not because he is congenitally deficient, but because there are other substitutes around him. Don't forget that there are many female stars around him. Huh. Reasonable. I almost forgot about it. He had an affair with Nicole Kidman and Robin White. This guy wants to do it, and there are countless beautiful women who are willing to take the initiative to let him get on. That's right, Eric Cooper must have stepped on a few boats, or had several lovers, and he must have a lot of canaries under his hands as a young and powerful entertainment magnate. I have to say that netizens' thinking divergence ability is still very strong, and they have deduced the original appearance of the incident very accurately. Wait, Sister Olsen also had an affair with this guy. They were also underage at the time. Do you need to investigate again? It's endless, it's endless. He also took Elizabeth Olsen to Jackson's Manor to play. With this way of sitting, there is no clean person in the world. Anyway, I've always believed in Eric's character. He's so handsome, and I'll be happy to climb into his bed as long as he hooks his fingers. Fuck off, nympho girl. Dude, this person's avatar is a man. Gross. Meaningless discussion. The police have already qualified, and Balafali is only a very vague description. I want to know more about what Eric Cooper wants to do than this. It looks like he's going to make a big move. In front of the police station, Eric said, "Do you want to know where the real sex crimes are concentrated? Now, let me tell you." Next to him, Carol took out the finished manuscript and handed it to him, and Eric read it aloud. On August 21st, 2003, in Montgomery, Alabama, a 45-year-old white man sexually assaulted a 14-year-old black girl, and unfortunately, the girl was killed. On September 9th, 2003, in Little Rock, Arkansas, another 31-year-old white man sexually assaulted a 19-year-old girl, but at least she wasn't killed compared to the 14-year-old girl. On September 13th, 2003, in Dover, Delaware, a 16-year-old black boy tricked a 13-year-old white girl into his home and sexually assaulted her, and luckily she eventually escaped, but it was also a nightmare. On October 5, 2003, in Atlanta, Georgia, a 38-year-old white woman drugged a 13-year-old boy and imprisoned him in her home for a day and a night, during which time she sexually assaulted him repeatedly. On October 6, 2003, in Georgia, 3 black men kidnapped and imprisoned a 21-year-old white girl and sexually assaulted her in turn. Eric read aloud a series of cases, most of which were sexual crimes, mixed with homicides, trafficking, etc., and all of these cases occurred after August last year. The paparazzi below listened to him talk about these things, and they looked at each other for a while, and they couldn't understand what he meant. Even Leonard, the prosecutor next to him, was confused, and he had heard about several of these cases, but so what? The United States is the 4th largest country in the world, with a population of 300 million, making it the 3rd largest country in the world. There are many complex factors such as religion and race, and it is normal for several homicides to occur. It's just that in this era, when the internet is not too developed, these cases are generally not known to the whole country, and the vast majority of them will be stopped when they reach the city at most, and they can't even be published in the county. What's all the fuss about? All eyes were on Eric, who uttered dozens of them in one breath before holding up the remaining pile of paper in his hand. What I just said is only part of it. The real situation is more shocking than everyone thinks, and do you know why these cases happened? Because the murderers almost all used the same method in the process of committing crimes, adding the victims' friends on the internet, and then luring them out to meet and finally committing the crime. And the tools used by these murderers all come from the same, MySpace. Rumble. When they heard MySpace, many paparazzi finally realized the crisis, and it turned out that Eric Cooper's real target turned out to be it. At the same time, James Murdoch, who was watching TV with interest in the mansion, suddenly changed his face. Damn, this guy is going to attack MySpace. MySpace does have a large amount of unhealthy content due to the different routes it takes, and it is also anonymous information, and anyone can register and disguise themselves. Therefore, in the process of these cases, there must be a certain amount of responsibility. In the past, there have been victims or victims' families who have sued MySpace, but they have not made any waves, and the development of the website is quite good, with the number of registered members exceeding 40 million. Although there is still a gap between Facebook and Facebook, it is enough to be proud. But if Eric Cooper makes things bigger, it will be bad once the public anger is aroused, and the website may usher in a blood-changing overhaul. But he has no confidence that he can beat Facebook, including MySpace's various functions are just plagiarizing Facebook and then changing the skin. What do you do to fight with others? Thinking of this, James Murdoch hurriedly picked up the phone and called his father, Rupert Murdoch, but no one answered. I called my father's secretary again and learned that there was a meeting, so I could only ask the other party to find someone quickly. After a while, the phone was connected, and the elder Murdoch said with some displeasure, James, what's so urgent? I'm having an important meeting. James Murdoch hurriedly told him what had happened, but the elder Murdoch didn't pay attention. He invested in the internet a few years ago, but as soon as he entered the market, he encountered a bubble period, and the loss was called a loss of money. Since then, he has not had any faith in the internet, and if it weren't for James Murdoch being his beloved eldest son, he wouldn't let the other party toss MySpace. In Murdoch Sr.'s view, newspapers and television stations are the core of News Corporation, and the internet stuff may bubble again tomorrow. If it collapses, it will collapse. Just let the son collect his heart and concentrate on coming back to inherit his mantle. Father, the internet is the future. I finally built MySpace. I can't just let it disappear. Facebook will completely dominate the entire market, and then no one will be Eric Cooper's opponent. If you insist, I can help you once. Go and contact Singh and you two will discuss. Thank you, Dad. James Murdoch hurriedly contacted Singh, the head of Fox TV, but the answer he received poured cold water on him. James, I know you're worried, but now that Eric Cooper has kidnapped us, and the whole country, the whole world is watching, do you know what the consequences would be if the live broadcast was suddenly interrupted? Fox's credibility is going to plummet, and we're going to lose a lot of loyal viewers, which is going to be a huge blow. And even if Fox cuts off the broadcast, what about the other stations? Do you think NBC and CBS will cooperate with us? Singh, I know you know them well, and I hope you can help convince those people, and that's what my father meant. There was silence for a moment on the other side, and just when James Murdoch thought there was still room for salvation, Singh replied with a big no. James, I'm afraid I can't do anything about your request. I'll explain it to Rupert in person. Goodbye.
Bang!
Unexpectedly, the other party rejected him. In order to deal with Eric Cooper, he also contributed a lot, and now he was immediately abandoned when he encountered difficulties. James Murdoch angrily threw the phone on the ground. Who knew that the Nokia material was very strong, and after a flick, it hit his face, and he screamed in pain. It is precisely because of the problems in MySpace's system that a series of sexual assault cases have occurred. As a social networking site, MySpace has a lot of pornography, and a lot of people use nudity as a selling point to attract attention. And there is no age limit for registration in MySpace, and tens of millions of minors want to enjoy a virtual dating, but when they log in, they are greeted by erotic elements that pervade the surroundings and cannot be stopped. There is no doubt that MySpace has become the best and most convenient tool for countless criminals to find their targets, and it is a breeding ground for crime, and it is the gathering place and base camp of sexual assault in the United States. I would like to ask all the viewers in front of the TV, especially the parents and fathers, do you want your children to be in this dirty online environment? Do you want your healthy, sunny child to become a pervert with only sex left in his head? You want your child to be led out by the criminals in disgusting ways, and when you see him again, will he already be a corpse? Ask yourself, do you want this to happen? Tell me, do you want to? The more Eric spoke, the angrier he became, his voice roaring, his expression becoming hideous, and the veins on his neck were faintly visible. Wow! Suddenly, his right hand flicked violently, and hundreds of pieces of paper with clearly written sentences and criminal cases were scattered like snowflakes. The papers may seem as thin as a cicada's wings, but each one weighs 1,000 pounds and represents a large number of victims. Eric's words were more like a sharp sword, piercing straight into the hearts of every viewer in front of the TV. Even if you are not a parent now, you will become a parent in the future, not to mention that people's hearts are made of flesh, who can endure the occurrence of sin.
No.
In the crowd of onlookers, a roar came from nowhere, and then in the blink of an eye, the outside of the police station was already filled with angry voices. Looking at the excited crowd, Godot knew that Eric did it. He always managed to do miracles. He always had the ability to turn the tide. The tall figure in front of her filled her heart, and she felt like she had fallen again. Eric's furious speech at the door of the Los Angeles Police Department swept the United States in almost half a day through live TV and online broadcasts. Major television stations and newspapers were kidnapped by him and put on the chariot, and even if they resisted in their hearts, they had to react. Otherwise, you will broadcast live, but you won't let out a single fart in the follow-up. Where is the credibility? At present, the U.S. media has not yet degenerated into the shameless situation of turning their eyes open and telling nonsense and pretending to be blind in the face of the facts, especially when dealing with their own people, and they do not dare to do so blatantly. If you don't report, the audience will naturally be disappointed in you and then abandon you and turn to other courageous media. There are still some less influential regional TV stations, broadcasters, and newspapers that are more than willing to get involved in this matter to attract traffic. Even if it's the worst outcome, these bastards are all blind, and Eric won't lose. Because their behavior will inevitably help Lionheart attract countless new members, Anyway, he eats both ends and makes a steady profit. Click. With a twist of the key, Eric pushed the door open. Looking at the neatly arranged and cleaned new home in front of him, Godot added a touch of emotion to his heart. Honey, this is the house I bought for you. The transportation is convenient and the concealment is also very good. I have long wanted you to move in. As he spoke, Eric broke her hand and placed the key neatly in the palm of his hand. You're the hostess here from now on, do you like it? Godot nodded slightly. It's been a few days, and Eric is overjoyed to see that she finally has a positive response. Although he knew that this positive response was partly because Godot thought that he would only invite himself to the family dinner tomorrow night, it would be a good start. Tomorrow night's affairs will be handed over to tomorrow night. Anyway, there will be a mother to cover for herself. Rub. His arms were folded horizontally. Godot had been picked up, and the two of them walked inside. At this moment, the complex emotions that had been accumulated for several days were all intertwined into desires. At noon on Ho Day, Qingming River map. Dancing to figure out the shadow, the dynasty dry red wine. In the same room, he bent his bow and shot the eagle. Qingmei rode a bamboo horse and planted willows everywhere. Godot soon fell into a deep sleep. After a kiss on her cheek, Eric pulled away. There was still a lot of work to do, and there wasn't much time for children to be long. Boss, your speech is really amazing. I'm going to be fascinated. In the car, Carol complimented Eric while rubbing his shoulders, and the two big boobs rubbed him from time to time. He has desires and no mood now. In the driver's seat, looking at Carol's seductive look, Pete couldn't help but curse a bitch. Then he added in his heart, bitch with a lot of workability. Eric took out his phone and called Dan Jones. Ms. Jones, it's me. I know, Mr. Cooper. How's the investigation going? The other side hesitated for a moment. It's not going too well. I'm looking for more ways to get closer to Harvey Weinstein, but he's wary these days. My team is watching him 24 hours a day, but this guy doesn't show any clues. Not even when he's at home. The things you said didn't happen. What about hotels? What about the set? The red sofa doesn't have to be at home. No, he hasn't been to a hotel. He's never been to the set, except for the company and going home, just eating with guests. But it's all men. Harvey Weinstein is not going to be a gay. That's not it. I haven't heard that he has sexually assaulted a man, so you keep staring and report to me as soon as there is news. Okay, boss, but I guess it should be difficult. At least it will take quite some time. Why? You're a top-notch super detective in the industry, and your business skills are well known. Eric asked. Dan Jones laughed. Mr. Cooper, have you forgotten that furious speech you gave this morning? People all over the United States saw it. As an enemy, at this sensitive moment, do you think Harvey Weinstein will restrain himself or indulge himself? I think as long as he's not crazy and knows it's time to stay out of the limelight, he's bound to think this way. Well, that's what I ignored. Anyway, do your duty and keep staring at him. Of course, we're professionals, and Mr. Cooper, you look so handsome when you speak. Thank you for the compliment. Waiting for your good news. Hanging up the phone, Eric looked at Carol with a frown. How are those victims contacted? Carol has been instructed to find actresses who have been sexually assaulted by Harvey Weinstein these days, not only actresses, but also screenwriters, directors, etc. As long as you are a person in the circle, it is best that you have just entered the industry and you still have to ask him, then this guy's claws will not let you go. There are many rumors about this half-orc in the circle, and many of his sexual assault targets have a clear direction. Some of them already have a certain amount of fame, while others can still only play small roles. In the entertainment industry, it's not that you can become popular by sleeping with the big guys. You really rely on your life to be popular. For example, the famous sentence, Beijing is sweet in the north, Yihuan in the south, Zhuang Xinyan who is not popular. Especially Jing Tian, The man behind her wasted money for her, all kinds of domestic big-scale production heroines and Hollywood big-scale productions, but there was nothing to gain except the ridicule of the audience. Later, the Gold Lord left her, and after a few years of ups and downs, she also met Cito by chance, and finally turned over. It can be seen that money in this circle is really not omnipotent, and no eye is no eye edge. But Jing Tian doesn't say anything else. At least her appearance is online. Otherwise, it would be impossible for the owner to throw so much money at her. And seeing the appearance of those actresses with Harvey Weinstein's unspoken rules, Eric always feels that this guy is really not picky, and he can get out of his mouth with any kind of goods. It seems that he is really hungry. According to the clues, already dozens of people were contacted privately, but most of them were scruples. They didn't want to get involved in the struggle between large companies, and even some aftermath would be enough to ruin their future. And many of them have been threatened by Harvey Weinstein to sign non-disclosure agreements, so there are currently only 11 people who are willing to speak out. These people are all small characters who are not famous. To be honest, bosses, even if they are tied together, they feel like they are being framed, and they can't have a final effect. Isn't there credibility? Almost. There is a lack of actors who have enough coffee positions to stand up, and these small characters are willing to help us, because they don't have hope for the future. Eric sighed. There is no conclusive evidence. It is not so simple to bring down a Hollywood tycoon. Don't think that Miramax is just a subsidiary of Disney and looks down on Harvey Weinstein. His power is only second to the top echelon, and the global entertainment industry is also rare. DreamWorks has produced a lot of good movies, but Spielberg's influence in Hollywood is much weaker than Harvey Weinstein's. The biggest reason why this guy fell in later generations was that he was killed by his own brother Bob Weinstein. As a brother, Bob Weinstein has a lot of his brother's sexual assault black material in his hands, and in order to compete for the company, he broke these revelations to the media. But in a hurry, where does Eric go to get evidence of Harvey Weinstein's sexual assault? There is no evidence, just a few people with empty white teeth, at most like Falafali to splash some dirty water. If you don't die by fighting a snake, you will be harmed by it, and the other party will not give you another chance in the future, and you must kill it with one blow. Carol, you continue to contact those victims, and I will find a way to find evidence. Okay, boss. At the same time, Eric's opponents are also urgently negotiating. I just said that this kid is not easy to deal with, and we have been used instead. Humph. It must have been Charlie Cooper behind his back, and it was difficult for a young man in his 20s to have such calculations. Now that everyone has been kidnapped, we need a countermeasure, and once it follows Eric Cooper's intentions, it is equivalent to being led by the nose. The focus now is on how to protect my space, and that's the first thing we want to think about. James, what the Cooper kid said is true or false, you know best in your heart. Even if it is false, you can only treat it as true now. I think your website has received a complaint letter, and the Ministry of Commerce, Cybersecurity Bureau, and other departments should also have received it. James Murdoch was speechless, not to mention received, since the end of the morning speech. Within half an hour, countless abuses and complaints had filled the backstage of my space, and the staff couldn't see it. You can't close the channels for complaints and suggestions, or someone from above will immediately rush to the door of MySpace's headquarters to protest and demonstrate. This set of methods is too familiar to Americans. They have nothing to protest when they are idle. They are idle anyway, and they can also highlight their sense of justice. Complaints are only temporary, just like a hot spot, and when a new hot spot emerges, the enthusiasm of the people will be diverted. In short, MySpace can't fall. It's our only position on the network. I've done a lot of work for this battle. You can't abandon me. It's a pity that his anger is ignored. It is a loose alliance, and in the face of damage to its own interests, it is not impossible to sacrifice allies, not to mention that it can suck a lot of traffic from the sacrificed allies. Scolding this group of vampire scum in his heart, James Murdoch can only come up with the last resort. We are allies, we have a common enemy, and your abandonment of allies will only make people laugh. There are a lot of problems with my space, but so does Facebook, which also contains a lot of pornography. What's more, Eric Cooper himself has been labeled a criminal, and we have to launch a more intensive attack, and we can't simply let him get his way, don't you? Everyone, you look at me, I look at you, and then an idea popped up in my heart at the same time. It's not bad to use waste. Evening, Beverly Hills, Cooper's house. Eric and his parents were watching the TV information while eating, and sure enough, as expected, no one could ignore the turbulent public opinion provoked by Eric. Even its own Fox TV had to turn its guns on MySpace. But the chicken thief is that when these guys discuss MySpace's vulnerabilities, they all bring Facebook with them. Admittedly, MySpace did play some bad roles in these cases, but it was very inappropriate to recklessly put the label of a gathering place for criminals on it, and Eric Cooper's actions constituted defamation. And there is no such thing as a perfect thing in the world, not to mention that as an emerging social media, everyone is in the groping stage, and it is inevitable that something unexpected will happen. Moreover, not only does MySpace have some marginal content, but also as social media, Facebook uses marginal balls as a means to attract users. Eric Cooper, as the de facto controller of Facebook, must be aware of his site's shortcomings. And he blames MySpace for all the cases, but deliberately ignores the role of Facebook in fueling the trouble, which is despicable. As we all know, Eric Cooper passed the polygraph, but we all know that the accuracy of a polygraph is not 100%, which means that the conclusions are not completely convincing. For a man who may have been a sexual assault on a minor himself, it is ironic and not credible to say that speech from his lips. After reading Fox's report, my mother said angrily, "Eric, these people are simply ignoring the facts, and the police have proven your innocence." "Mom, I'm innocent. Even if I didn't take a polygraph, they just want to bring the focus of public opinion back to me," Eric sneered. But this method is what I expected, and what they are doing is precisely to drive MySpace to a dead end. When I woke up, the time came to the next day. After opening their eyes, they turned on the computer as soon as they opened their eyes, and then entered Yahoo to see what hot and interesting events were happening today, and they immediately saw a message at the top of Yahoo's major sections. Facebook issued an announcement. After watching Mr. Eric Cooper's speech yesterday, the company has deeply reflected on itself. We realized that our management system was not yet perfect, and there were still some loopholes. Especially after comparing it with other social media on the market, we are more aware of the terrible consequences that these vulnerabilities can cause, which is likely to be bloody human lives. Therefore, after careful consideration, the company has decided to permanently close the drift bottle-related business. For other functions that may trigger sex crimes, we also implore market supervision, and we will definitely take decisive action. The person who signed it was Fitz Heitenberg, who is known to be the head of Facebook. Just after the announcement, Fitz also updated a post on his Facebook account. "I've broken my wrist, what about you?